Networking is connecting with others, usually in a similar profession, or someone who has similar ideas or similar interests, and you're sharing ideas and learning from each other. There's a lot of different benefits to networking.
The great thing, and what we're going to talk about today, is that with digital opportunities to network, there's a lot of opportunities out there that don't have to be in person. So you're not limited to just that. So like I said, online or in person, you can network. It's really important for your future career and your career while you're in college. So it could lead to getting internships and things like that. And when you're deciding that you're going to network professionally with people, there's a few things that you want to do. One of the things is that you want to make sure to dress appropriately. You're not going to want to go out and grab coffee with somebody or get on a Zoom meeting if you're in jeans and a t-shirt. Even just put on a button-up shirt or something that just looks a little bit more professional. It can vary based on the industry that you're interested in. So, if you're going to talk to someone in finance, you might dress up a little bit more. A lot of the banking industries tend to be more traditional and people dress up more. And especially if you're meeting with somebody who's also working at the moment too, they're going to be dressed up. So try to think about matching kind of where they're at. Make sure that you keep your communication professional. And one of the ways to network, especially if you're feeling nervous, this is the best thing to do. Ask questions. So don't feel like you have to come into the networking meeting with a ton of information about yourself. You're more focusing on the other person. So ask them, a little bit about what they do, what they enjoy, how they got to where they're at. Have your elevator pitch ready. So if you haven't already worked on your elevator pitch, there's some information about what an elevator pitch is in our professional handbook. You can check that out or just Google elevator pitch and check out an article from the Muse or the Balanced Careers. And what that is like a 60-second informational bit about yourself. So it's like, this is who I am. This is where I hope to be one day. Have a resume or a LinkedIn profile kind of ready to go in case somebody asks you for that. And I would print out copies. You don't need to offer it to somebody right when you meet, a person that you're networking with, but you do want to have it on hand or have it ready. So like if you're going out and you're starting to network with people, whether that be through events, online meetups, Zoom informational interviews, anything like that, you're going to want to have these things ready. So make sure you've touched base with the Career Center, you've built a resume, you've built a LinkedIn profile, and you have those already built so that if someone asks for them, you'll have them ready to go.
So what should I be doing to network online? Well, one of the things that you could do is make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile and reach out to people on LinkedIn. You can join LinkedIn groups, follow companies on LinkedIn, and you can comment on people's LinkedIn posts, kind of staying active and getting involved on LinkedIn.
Let me just emphasize, it's so important for scoring a job or an internship after you graduate or when you're in college. It can make all the difference. And I used to work in recruiting before I worked with the Career Center, and a lot of the times the people that we hired for internships and for entry-level positions were people who either knew someone who worked at that company, or they had maybe reached out and done an informational interview, or it was students who reached out to me over LinkedIn. So that can make a big difference, that networking piece. You'll want to get a feel for like what you're interested in and what you do and don't like in a job. There's a lot of options, and I'll talk a little bit about first connections first. So first connections are people you've met directly, and they're usually the ones that are easiest to reach out to when you begin networking. These are people like friends, family friends who you've met directly, alumni who you used to have in your classes that have graduated now, previous coworkers, all those people that you've met in person are first connections. And a lot of times they're, people who you don't necessarily need an introduction for. you can reach out to them and talk to them over email or over the phone without having to set kind of the standard of this is who I am and this is why I'm reaching out to you. They already know all that. So those are great people to connect with. Now, with your first connections, you can broaden your network by finding out who they know. So this is kind of the terms they use on LinkedIn too. So think about, okay, well, my mom has a friend who works in radiology. She might be somebody who would be good to talk to learn about that field if I'm interested in it. So think a little bit about who the people that you know might know, or if you have a LinkedIn profile, you can even tap in and find those second connections through searches. And if you find someone who's connected with someone you already know, you can ask them to introduce you to them.
People who you don't know, you'll approach a little bit differently than people who you already know or who are in your network. It is possible to reach out to people who you don't know. I'd recommend first trying to get in touch with these people by joining LinkedIn groups, following companies online, or commenting on posts that people put on LinkedIn. That way you already have an avenue to open the discussion to having a conversation with that person. If you're reaching out to someone through a cold email or a cold LinkedIn message, make sure to customize that message. Try to reach out to somebody who's in an entry-level position who is likely to respond back.
Other sites are an option for networking, but be careful about reaching out to people on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Because, and the reason why it's so different from LinkedIn is they can tap into all your personal information. So just think, if you're going to reach out to someone on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram who you don't already know, that might not be a great avenue. But if it's someone you already know, then, that's a great avenue to reach out to people. Another thing that you can do is online or in-person meetups and networking events. So there are some online networking events that people can join. One of the great ways to do that is through organizations' web pages. So if you're parts of professional organizations that relate to your industry, they'll post opportunities for different networking events and webinars too. Informational interviews are a great way to connect to people in your industry, broaden your network, and learn. So informational interviews are basically like curious conversations. So I'm going to take away the word interview for a minute because I don't want people to get too caught up in that. Think about it as a conversation that you're having with someone to learn about what they do and if it's something that you'd be interested in. There's a couple of different ways to set up an informational interview. We'll go back to networking for a second and think about different people who you could set up an informational interview with. There are people who are first connections, people who you already know, people who are second connections, or people who are third connections who you don't know at all. So I'm going to focus on the people who you don't know at all. So say you're interested in marketing and you don't know anybody in that field. It's still possible to reach out to people and set up an informational interview, even if you don't know anybody. So that's okay. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about how to do that. You can contact people over LinkedIn, over email, over Facebook, though I'd avoid that unless you're in a professional Facebook group because you don't typically want to connect with people over Facebook for professional reasons. But primarily LinkedIn and email are really great resources to find people who are in the professional field. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that. So say you search marketing coordinator because that's something you're interested in being, and it's giving me the option to message them. It doesn't always do that right away. Sometimes you have to connect with them first, send a personalized message about why you want to connect with them, and then send them a message. So I'm going to send this person a message. I'm not actually going to do this, but if I was going to do this, this is what it would look like. I would say informational interview request. Oh, let's spell it right. Okay, so you'll notice I kept it short and simple. I basically just asked her if she was interested in, or open, I need to stop saying interested. She's open to doing an informational interview with me so that I could learn about the career path because I'm a college student. And I just want to talk with her for 30 minutes over the phone or over Zoom. Kept it short and simple. I also added my email on the bottom and my phone number to make sure that she could get in touch with me if for some reason LinkedIn didn't work. You'll notice it's not probably going to let me send this message. So she's someone who I might have to connect with first before I can send the message to. So if I was interested in speaking with one of them, I would probably first try to find somebody who was kind of local. That way, even if we're doing a Zoom informational interview now, maybe later on I could meet up with them in person, or they could at least connect me to jobs in the area. So I'm a student and I am hoping to learn a little bit more about what it's like to work in higher education. And I thought it would be good for me to do an informational interview so that I can learn a little bit about your job and what you like about working in higher education and working for a college. So I appreciate your time today.
Sure. It's good to talk with you.
What would a typical day look like for you? I guess there's no typical day, but what would a typical day or week look like for you in the position?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's no typical day.
Well, thanks for sharing that information. What recommendations do you have for somebody who's interested in the field, to be able to get their foot in the door, things they should be doing in college to prepare for it?
That's a really good question. Students should be preparing by going to their career center.
Okay, well, that all makes sense. What I would like to do is probably stay in touch with you if that's okay. Great. Well, I'll add you on LinkedIn, and if I ever have any other questions, do you mind if I reach out?
No, that's wonderful. And LinkedIn, I'm glad you brought that up. LinkedIn's a really good place to start establishing yourself because people look at it and you can start putting out there what you're interested in and all the skills you're developing when you're in college. It's not even when you leave.
After an informational interview, meeting someone at a networking event, if you connect with someone after a webinar, or any of those things, it's really good to stay in touch with people, particularly after an informational interview. So let me just highlight that. One of the ways that you can stay in touch with people is to immediately after you meet with them, send a thank you note. Definitely do this if you do an informational interview or if the person has gone out of their way to help you and give you information. Send a thank you email. It doesn't have to be like a handwritten note, especially if you want it to get to them pretty quickly. Make sure to do a nice thank you email. Try not to copy a thank you email template from the internet. Personalize it and say 1 or 2 things that you learned from that person that you really enjoyed learning about or that you felt was really interesting. I would strongly encourage people to stay in touch with the connections that they make. Follow up every couple of months, see how they're doing, maybe send them an article that you found interesting online that you think they might find interesting, and just make sure to kind of keep that conversation open, keep that door open. One of the things that I recommend is tracking who you've reached out to for informational interviews or for conversation in a spreadsheet. So here's the spreadsheet that I have, and I have a tab for job applications, I have a tab for networking events, I have a tab for companies that I'm interested in, and I have a tab for job contacts. So this Excel sheet says what company they work for, when I met them, how I met them, and like when I'd like to follow up with them. So I'll close this out with saying that internet networking is really important, especially right now if you're hoping to get a job or an internship. So just because you may be remote or you might be further away, it doesn't mean that you can't meet with people online or over Zoom and continue to learn from other people in your field. Reach out to people over LinkedIn, over email, start making some connections and broaden your network so that when it comes time for a job, one, you know what kind of job you're interested in, and two, maybe you have some connections who can help you find a job. All right, that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and be sure to check out the rest of our videos on the CCPD YouTube page.